My name is Tracy Sullivan, 35, owner of a bakery in Mesa, Arizona. For years, I worked overtime pouring every extra dollar into my little brother's dream of becoming a doctor. Rent, utilities, tuition. I covered it all thinking family comes first. But last Wednesday night, my phone lit up with an email I wasn't meant to see. He called me pathetic, said I'd embarrass him in front of his girlfriend's fancy family, and told me to skip Thanksgiving. Pathetic. The word burned each letter, a betrayal of every late-night shift I took to fund his life. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking, wondering how the kid I'd carried on my shoulders could stab me in the back. I could have called him, screamed, demanded an apology, but I didn't. Instead, I started thinking about all those checks I'd written, all those sacrifices. What happened next? Let's just say his rent, utilities, and tuition money didn't show up either. And when the truth came out, it wasn't just his wallet that took a hit. Have you ever set boundaries with family? Drop your story in the comments and hit that subscribe button to see how mine unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Growing up in Mesa, Arizona, our family lived in a small house filled with laughter. My little brother Ryan Sullivan and I were inseparable back then. We'd race bikes in the backyard, build forts out of old blankets, and dream big under the stars. I wanted to bake the best cakes in town, while Ryan, even at 10, talked about saving lives as a doctor. Those nights felt endless, our voices bouncing off the walls as we planned our futures. My parents, Gregory Sullivan and Diane Sullivan, beamed with pride, especially at Ryan's report cards. Straight A's, science fair trophies, his brain seemed wired for greatness. Me, I was the creative one, doodling cake designs in my notebooks, but I never minded their praise for him. It felt right, like we were a team. After high school, I skipped college and poured my heart into opening a bakery. The early days were brutal: 16-hour shifts, flour-dusted aprons, and barely enough cash to keep the lights on. But every time a customer smiled at my red velvet cupcakes, I knew I'd made the right call. Ryan, though, went the path Mom and Dad always dreamed of. He got into a top university pre-med, and 2 years ago started medical school. They called him their future doctor, their eyes glowing like he was already holding a scalpel. I was proud too, but that pride came with a price. It started small, covering Ryan's dorm fees when his scholarship fell short, then his rent for an apartment off campus because he needed space to study. Utilities, textbooks, even his grocery bills, I picked up the tab. Over the years, those payments stacked up, tens of thousands of dollars wired from my account to his. I didn't keep a ledger back then. It was just what you do for family. Mom and Dad didn't have the means. Dad fixed electrical systems, Mom worked at a bank, so I stepped up. They'd call me after every wire transfer, gushing about Ryan's latest exam scores, his internship at a hospital. He's going to make it big. Dad would say, his voice thick with hope. You're helping him get there, Tracy. But their words had an edge. Ryan's doing something important. Mom once said, her tone soft but pointed, not like decorating cakes. I laughed it off, but it stung. They'd compare us, not always outright, but in small ways: Ryan's grades versus my long hours, his future versus my present. I'd nod, smile, keep working, keep sending money. It wasn't just about Ryan. It was about proving I could be the big sister he needed. I'd stay late at the bakery, tweaking recipes, balancing books, all while wiring another payment to cover his electric bill. My savings dwindled, my dreams of expanding the bakery pushed to the back burner. But family comes first, right? Ryan called sometimes, mostly to say thanks or ask for more. His voice carried a new confidence, like he was already someone important. I'd hear about his study groups, his new friends, the pressure of med school. I got it, med school's tough, expensive. So I kept sending money even when my own bills piled up. Mom and Dad would drop by the bakery not to check on me but to talk about Ryan's latest achievements. He's under so much stress, Mom said once, stirring her coffee. You're doing the right thing helping him. I'd nod, ignoring the ache in my chest, the sense that my work, my life, was somehow less. I told myself it was temporary, that Ryan would graduate, get a job, and we'd be even. I believed in him, in us, in the family we'd always been. Looking back, I see the cracks forming. Ryan's calls grew shorter, his thanks more perfunctory. Mom and Dad's visits felt like check-ins on Ryan's behalf, not mine. But I pushed those thoughts aside, focused on the next batch of cupcakes, the next wire transfer. I was the big sister, the one who held things together. That's what I told myself anyway, until everything changed. When Ryan started his second year of med school, I noticed he wasn't the little brother I used to know. His calls, once full of chatter about exams or hospital rotations, became rare. When he did reach out, it was always the same: a quick thanks for the money, or a blunt request for more. I'd pick up the phone expecting stories about his classes, but instead got a rushed, "Can you send $500 for my phone bill, or rent's due next week?" Each time I wired the cash, telling myself he was under pressure, that med school demanded focus. But something felt off, like he was slipping away, and I wasn't sure why. Then I saw his social media. Ryan's posts were a parade of excess dinners at upscale restaurants, with crystal chandeliers, weekend trips to San Diego beaches, tailored jackets I knew cost more than my monthly rent. One photo showed him at a rooftop bar, clinking glasses with friends I'd never met, all dressed like they belonged in a magazine. I scrolled through, my stomach twisting. I was scraping by, skipping new equipment for my bakery to keep his lights on while he was living a life I couldn't afford. How was he paying for this? My money, I realized, wasn't just covering textbooks or rent, it was funding something else entirely. That's when I learned about Courtney Lane, Ryan's girlfriend. She came from a wealthy family. Her dad owned a chain of car dealerships in Phoenix. Courtney's Instagram was all designer bags and private wine tastings, and Ryan was right there beside her, matching her vibe. She'd tagged him in posts from a ski trip in Aspen, a place I'd only seen in movies. I didn't know her well, but her influence was clear. Ryan was chasing her world, one far from our modest Mesa roots. He'd always been ambitious, but this felt different, like he was rewriting who he was to fit her circle. I brought it up with Mom and Dad during one of their rare visits to the bakery. "Ryan's spending a lot," I said, showing them a post of him in a sleek blazer at some gala. Mom brushed it off. "He's in med school, Tracy. He needs to network, build an image for his career." Dad nodded, sipping his coffee. "Doctors don't dress like construction workers. Let him do what he needs to." Their words landed like a slap. My bakery, my long hours, they didn't see that as building an image. I was just the sister who paid the bills, not the one they bragged about at church. Still, I kept sending money, though the doubts grew louder. Ryan's requests got bolder: 2,000 for a professional conference that looked more like a party, 800 for a new laptop because his crashed. I'd stare at my bank account, the numbers shrinking, and wonder what I was missing. Was I being paranoid, or was Ryan using me? One night he called, his voice sharp. "I need $3,000 for a networking event," he said. "It's important for connections to keep up with my peers." Keep up? The phrase stuck with me, like I was holding him back. I sent the money, but the unease settled in my chest, heavy and unyielding. I started checking his posts more often, each one a reminder of the gap between us. A photo of him and Courtney at a yacht club, another of him in a new watch gleaming under restaurant lights. My bakery was doing okay, but I couldn't afford half the things he flaunted. I'd lie awake replaying his voice, his demands, wondering when my brother had become a stranger. I wanted to confront him, ask what he was doing with my money, but every time I reached for the phone, I stopped. He was still family, still the kid I'd believed in, but that belief was fraying, and I didn't know how much longer it would hold. One Wednesday evening, after a grueling day at work, an email from Ryan popped up on my phone. I was wiping down the bakery counter, exhausted from a 10-hour shift, when the notification lit up. Expecting another request for money, I opened it. But this wasn't a request. It was a mistake, a message meant for Courtney, his girlfriend. "Tracy's pathetic," Ryan wrote. She'd embarrass me in front of your family with her small-town baker vibe. Tell her not to come for Thanksgiving. My heart stopped. Pathetic. The words sliced through me, each letter a reminder of every dollar I'd sent him, every late night I'd worked to keep his life afloat. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the words stayed sharp, unyielding. I sank onto a stool, my hands trembling. All those extra hours, the double shifts, the skipped vacations, those were for him. I'd stayed late to perfect a wedding cake order so I could cover his rent. I'd skipped buying a new mixer to pay his tuition. And now I was pathetic for it. The betrayal burned, mixing with memories of wiring thousands to his account, believing I was helping my brother chase his dream. I wanted to scream, to call him, and demand an explanation, but my throat tightened and no words came. Instead, I sat there staring at the screen, feeling smaller than I ever had. I needed to talk to someone, so I called Justin Perry, my best friend since high school. His voice was steady, grounding as I read him the email, my voice cracking. He called me pathetic Justin. He doesn't want me at Thanksgiving. Justin didn't hesitate. Tracy, you've given him everything. Maybe it's time to stop. His words hit hard, echoing the doubts I'd pushed down for months. He wasn't just talking about money. He meant my loyalty, my trust. I hung up his advice, ringing in my ears, but I wasn't ready to decide. Not yet. Unable to sleep, I opened my phone again, this time to Ryan's social media. A new post stared back at me, a photo from Las Vegas, Ryan and Courtney posing in front of a glowing casino fountain. He wore a sharp suit, she a glittering dress, both smiling like they owned the world. The caption read, "Living it up in Vegas." My stomach churned. That trip wasn't cheap: hotels, drinks, those clothes. I'd sent him money for a study program just last week. Was this what my sacrifices funded? The thought twisted the knife deeper, my trust in him unraveling with every swipe through his posts. I couldn't keep ignoring it. Ryan wasn't just drifting, he was using me, and that email proved it. But before I could act, I needed clarity. I'd poured so much into him, and I had to know how deep the damage went. The next morning, I called Gerald Brooks, my financial advisor. He'd helped me balance the bakery's books before, and I trusted his no-nonsense approach. I need to go over my accounts. I told him, my voice firm, despite the ache in my chest. Everything I've sent to my brother, everything I've got left. Gerald agreed to meet the next day, promising to lay it all out. As I hung up, a resolve settled over me. Whatever came next, I was done being the sister who just paid the bills. Friday morning, I sat down with my books at the bakery, my heart heavy. The sting of Ryan's email still lingered, his words pathetic, embarrassed me, looping in my mind. I needed answers, not just about his betrayal, but about what it had cost me. I'd scheduled a meeting with Gerald, my financial advisor, to face the numbers head-on. At his office, a small space cluttered with files and coffee mugs, Gerald spread out my bank statements across his desk. His pen tapped against the paper as he tallied up the transfers to Ryan. $60,000, he said, looking up. That's what you've sent him over the last 2 years. The number hit like a punch. 60,000. 2 years of my life, my bakery, my future poured into him. Gerald leaned back, his expression calm but firm. Tracy, you're running on fumes. Your savings are nearly gone, and the bakery's equipment is outdated. You can't keep funding Ryan's life. It's sinking you. He pointed to a spreadsheet showing how my payments for Ryan's rent, utilities, and tuition had eaten into my ability to replace an aging oven or hire extra help. Invest in yourself, he urged. Your bakery's got potential, but not if you keep bleeding cash. His words echoed Justin's advice from the night before, and for the first time I saw my sacrifices not as love, but as a weight dragging me down. I left Gerald's office with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Ryan's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was financial. I'd been so focused on being the good sister that I'd neglected my own dreams. That ended now. Sitting in my car, I logged into my bank app and canceled the recurring transfers for Ryan's rent and utilities. No more monthly checks, no more covering his electric bill or internet. The biggest step came next: his tuition. I'd been paying a chunk of it directly to his medical school, a cost that left me skipping upgrades for my shop. With a deep breath, I decided that was over too. Back at the bakery, I called a supplier I'd been eyeing for months. "I want that new convection oven," I told them, my voice steady. "And the stainless steel prep table." The order totaled what I'd have sent Ryan for the next month's rent and bills. As I hung up, a wave of relief washed over me. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself, my bakery, my future. The new oven would let me take on bigger orders, maybe even cater events. The prep table would make my mornings smoother, less chaotic. I could already picture the extra cupcakes I'd churn out, the customers I'd draw in. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd given away. But I knew the hardest part was coming. Ryan's tuition payment was due soon, and I wasn't sending it. I picked up my phone and dialed the financial office at his medical school. "This is Tracy Sullivan," I said, my tone firm. "I'm no longer covering Ryan Sullivan's tuition payments." The woman on the line asked for confirmation, her voice neutral. I repeated myself, making it official. She noted it and warned that Ryan would be notified. I thanked her and hung up, my pulse racing. I'd just pulled the plug on his biggest lifeline, and there was no going back. As I locked up the bakery that evening, I braced myself for what was next. Ryan would find out soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. My parents would hear about it too, and I knew they'd have plenty to say. They'd always seen Ryan as their golden boy, the future doctor who could do no wrong. I could already hear their voices accusing me of abandoning him, of being selfish. But I wasn't. I was done letting Ryan's choices dictate my life. Whatever storm was coming, I'd face it, because for the first time I was standing up for myself. Thanksgiving night, as I ate dinner alone in my small apartment, my phone buzzed. The screen showed Mom's name, and my stomach tightened. I'd skipped the family gathering, still raw from Ryan's email calling me pathetic and telling me to stay away. I answered, bracing myself. Mom's voice came first, sharp with disappointment. "Tracy, why aren't you here? It's Thanksgiving." Before I could respond, Dad cut in. "Ryan needs you. He's got one more year of med school, and you know how expensive it is. You can't just cut him off." Their words stung, assuming I'd keep pouring money into Ryan's life, like nothing had changed. I heard Ryan in the background joining the call, his tone clipped. "Yeah, Tracy, we need to talk about this." I took a deep breath, my fingers gripping the phone. "Let's talk then," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I got your email, Ryan, the one you sent to your girlfriend by mistake." Silence fell heavy and tense. I didn't wait for them to recover. "You called me pathetic. Said I'd embarrass you in front of her family." I read it to them word for word. Tracy's pathetic. She'd embarrass me with her small-town baker vibe. Tell her not to come for Thanksgiving. Mom gasped, but Ryan didn't flinch. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his voice cold. "You misunderstood. I was stressed, okay? You need to snap out of it and keep helping me. Med school isn't cheap." I couldn't believe it. No apology, no regret, just more demands. Mom jumped in, her tone pleading. "Tracy, he's under pressure. You're being selfish staying away like this." Dad echoed her. "Your family. You don't abandon your brother over a misunderstanding." Their words felt like a betrayal, siding with Ryan, as if my years of sacrifice meant nothing. I clenched my jaw, the anger rising. "Selfish?" I said, my voice sharp. "I gave him $60,000. I worked double shifts, skipped my own dreams, and he calls me pathetic. I'm done, Mom. Done paying his rent, his bills, his tuition. He doesn't respect me, and I'm not his bank anymore." The line went quiet again, but I could feel their shock. Ryan finally spoke, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Wow, Tracy, real mature. You're going to ruin my future over one email." I didn't waver. "No, Ryan. You ruined this when you decided I wasn't worth your respect." I hung up, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into backing down. I'd spent years putting Ryan first, and all it got me was a label I didn't deserve. I grabbed my coat and keys, needing to get out to breathe. Justin, my best friend, had invited me to his place earlier, and I hadn't planned to go, but now I needed somewhere that felt safe. I drove to the house he shared with his wife, Martha Hayes, a warm, no-nonsense woman who'd always treated me like family. When I arrived, their home was alive with laughter, the table set with turkey mashed potatoes and pie. Justin greeted me with a hug, no questions asked, and Martha pulled out a chair. "You're just in time," she said, her smile genuine. We ate, talked, and laughed, the tension from the call melting away. Justin shared stories about his latest carpentry project, and Martha teased him about his terrible cooking attempts. For the first time that day, I felt seen, valued, like I belonged. As I drove home that night, a quiet warmth settled in my chest. I'd chosen not to sit at a table where I wasn't wanted and instead found one where I was. The fight with my family wasn't over. I knew more calls, more arguments were coming. But I wasn't the same Tracy who'd let their expectations define her. I'd drawn a line, and I wasn't crossing it again. 3 days after Thanksgiving, Nancy Wheeler walked into my bakery. My cousin, a freelance journalist with a knack for digging up truths, hadn't visited in months. She slid onto a stool at the counter, her eyes serious. "Tracy, I saw Ryan's social media," she said, pulling out her phone. "He's been posting about trips to Miami, new sneakers, a leather jacket. That's your money, isn't it?" She showed me a photo of Ryan on a yacht, grinning with a drink in hand, time-stamped last week. My blood boiled. I'd sent him cash for school supplies right before that. Nancy's voice softened. "He's been lying to you. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my phone and texted Ryan. "We need to talk about your spending. Now." His reply came fast, dismissive. "Chill. It's not a big deal." That was it. The last straw. I told him to come to the bakery. An hour later, he stormed in, his face flushed with anger. Cheryl Dunn, my new employee, was frosting cupcakes behind the counter and froze as Ryan raised his voice. "You're making a scene over nothing, Tracy," he shouted. "I need money to finish med school, and you're too selfish to help your own brother." Customers glanced over, and Cheryl stepped back, wide-eyed. I kept my voice low but firm. "Selfish? I gave you $60,000, Ryan, and you used it for yachts and sneakers. You called me pathetic." "I'm done." Ryan scoffed, pacing the floor. "You're ruining my life over a few photos. I'm trying to become a doctor." His words echoed the same entitlement I'd heard on Thanksgiving, but this time, I didn't back down. "You're not my responsibility," I said. "You made your choices." He stormed out, slamming the door, leaving a stunned silence in the shop. Cheryl whispered, "You okay, Tracy?" I nodded, but inside, I was shaking, not from fear but from the weight of finally standing my ground. A week later, Mom and Dad showed up at the bakery, their faces stern. Mom spoke first, her voice heavy with judgment. "Tracy, you're tearing this family apart. Ryan can't finish school without your help." Dad crossed his arms. "Family comes first. You know that." I stared at them, the people who'd raised me, who'd cheered my every step as a kid, now defending the brother who'd betrayed me. "He lied to me," I said, my voice steady. "He used my money for trips while I worked myself to the bone." "And you're okay with that?" Mom shook her head. "He's under pressure. You're supposed to support him." I felt the old ache, the one that came from always being second to Ryan. But I was done. "I choose myself," I told them. "I'm done with Ryan, and if you can't respect that, I'm done with you too." Their eyes widened, but I meant it. No more calls, no more visits. I was cutting them off. By spring, my bakery was thriving. The new convection oven and prep table I'd bought worked wonders, churning out perfect pastries faster than ever. Customers lined up for my lemon tarts and custom cakes, and I hired Cheryl full-time. For the first time, I felt like I was building something for myself, not just propping up someone else's dreams. I heard through Nancy that Ryan had dropped out of med school. Without my money, he couldn't keep up with tuition or rent. He was working part-time at a convenience store, living in a rundown apartment after being evicted from his old place. Mom and Dad, I learned, were struggling to help him, their savings drained from years of favoring his path over mine. Their choices had consequences just as mine did. Looking back, I realized self-respect and boundaries mattered more than blind family loyalty. I'd spent years believing I had to sacrifice everything for Ryan, only to learn that family doesn't mean accepting disrespect. I found strength in saying no, in choosing my own path, and in building a life that felt true. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. Your time means the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Share them, because stories like these remind us we're not alone.